Food for thought, food for survival. Many of you that are new to prepping and just starting out, you're finding that there is a plethora of information out there about food storage and everything that you need to survive. I'm going to run through 10 common items, off-the-shelf items for food specifically, that you should already have or begin stocking up on, so this way you're more prepared in the event that something happens. This is the Urban Sentinel. Let's get into it. First up, beans. Whether they're baked beans in a can, pre-cooked beans, black beans, pinto beans, or if you just get dried beans in a bag, doesn't matter. Beans provide a high level of protein in substitution for meat. Now, granted, on an ounce for ounce basis, you will most likely always find more protein available in meat, but meat is not always available, whether it's just simply due to the cost or it's simply due to the scarcity. Whereas the beans themselves in the cans, in the bags, when properly stored, can last for a very, very long time without degrading themselves in terms of nutrient quality. Next on the list, tuna. Tuna fish in a can, tuna fish in these small little pouches. However you want to look at tuna fish, again, is about being able to provide yourself with protein and that nutrition that your body will need to feed off of that, rather than catabolizing your muscles and making you weaker when you need more strength to maintain yourself during a crisis situation. Tuna fish as a whole is nutritious, and you can actually use it in multiple recipes. You can just eat it straight out the can when you need to, and it's one of those easy long-term shelf stable items that you can buy, put up on the shelf, 2, 3, 4 months, whatever it is, something goes on, you know that that food is still good in that can. And many of the cans, when you look at their best by dates, properly sealed and maintained, they haven't been exposed to heat or anything like that, they can last beyond that best by date that is stamped on the can. Number 3, peanut butter. Peanut butter, again, I'm hitting on the protein because when you are existing, sleeping, waking, doesn't matter what it is, your body needs energy, and it takes the easiest readily available source that there is. Now, sugars, carbohydrates, those burn up very quickly. Your body will burn through that in a blink of an eye. What it needs is good, strong, stable, long-term energy, which you can get in protein. Fats, it takes longer to work off of, and you have to have a higher amount of fat available before your body starts consuming that. And if you're not doing it properly, that can lead into more complications than what you prefer. But peanut butter, again, shelf stable, lasts for a very long time. Only 2 things I would suggest is, 1, if in the event that, obviously, if you have nut allergies, you're not going to be buying this, you can look into alternatives such as sunflower butter, which can still provide a decent amount of protein. And as far as flavoring goes, it's something that isn't too difficult to get used to. But another thing you need to be careful of, and it's no particular brand, it just seems to be the way that the industry does it. When you look on the back of the ingredients for any jar of peanut butter, first up on the list, peanuts usually. Usually after that, you'll find sugar, salt, a little bit of water. You're done. That's peanut butter. If you find the brands that they offer a light or a diet version, I personally suggest staying away from them, because what you'll find is in those ingredients, you'll have at least 20 other things listed, most of them chemical compounds in there for this healthier, lighter, less calorically intense version of it. And again, if you're eating the peanut butter, especially in a survival situation, you would want to get as many calories as you possibly could with fewer chemicals and additives as necessary to maintain yourself. Number 4, rice. Any way you look at it, rice is one of those prepper staples along with beans. It's simple, it's easy, it's a rudimentary ingredient for a numerous number of recipes that you can use. Now, variety is definitely going to be key if you're looking at surviving 20, 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it is. You don't want to be bogged down in a routine to the point where you don't want to eat because you're getting tired of eating the same thing. While rice is still just rice, it does provide you with that sort of balance that you need to take in the carbs, get energy in, but also adds flavoring to certain meals, gives it a bit of a different texture, tricks your brain into thinking that, oh, this is a little bit different than what I had 2 days ago. And it's one of those things where it's easy to store in numerous ways and fashions, and you can buy a lot of it still right now for relatively low cost on a per pound basis. Number 5, Canned tomatoes, tomato sauce, tomato paste. Again, it's an ingredient. Yes, you can consume it straight out of the can or out of the jar, and you will be provided with a certain minimal level of sustenance. Most of these 10 are all standalone. Some of them are best combined with something else. But these are the most common things I found when going through YouTube and looking on the internet, that almost every other place has them on their top 5, top 10, top 15, and top 20. And it's one of those things, again, where flavor, variety of change to your palate is what also helps mentally you deal with it. You may only be working with a very small number of individual components. It's how you combine them together to make it work, to make meals that, one, provide you with what you need to keep going to the next day and the next day after that. And of course, number 6, everyone knows what goes best with red sauce and tomatoes: pasta. In the box, in the bag. The noodles, simple and easy. Granted, they are very water intensive. They're one of the few things that when you're looking at your resources, you really have to meter it out and decide what you're going to do. Now, a bonus with that is if you are going to make pasta and you're getting the water and everything else, think about other foods that also use water and at what extent can you use it. Now, you might start off with a large pot of water, make the pasta, and then you go to make, let's say, vegetables that don't need as much water, so you can utilize some of that water to cook them. And then maybe you have a few other items that you basically trickle down, so you're not wasting the water as a whole, because it's almost pointless in making the pasta for one meal and you've wasted a half gallon's worth of water in making it. If you can use other items, cooking and prepping things that will consume up the rest of the water, you have less loss available. Number 7, canned soup. Really comes down to honestly finding a brand that you like the best, and you have to consider differences between, example, this can of Progresso soup. Progresso is designed that you just pour it out, heat it up, and you're done. You don't have to add water. Whereas Campbell's and other soups, you do have to add water. But the availability and the variety of different types of soups out there will give you much more leeway and a little wiggle room to stretch out meals or make multiple meals. You can even simply add more vegetables or other types of meats in with the stock, as well as adding in with the rice. And depending upon how much water you use, you can either have more soup, a stew, or some other type of combination that you can blend in and mix in, and this will give you a longer lasting meal. Because in an SHTF situation, you may not be eating 3 meals a day every single day. You may have to ration and portion things out, where you might have one good breakfast in the morning and then a small, simple, just sort of refresher meal at the end of the day. Or you may switch it up where you fast through the morning into the afternoon and then have that one larger meal sort of mid-afternoon, early evening to carry you through. And it all depends upon your circumstances, what you have available, and how long the crisis that you're in is going to be lasting. But soup is one of those things where shelf stable, not a problem. It keeps for a very long time, and it provides you with enough of everything in most cases that you won't get tired of it right away. And it's always one of those things where pick the foods that you like, pick the foods that you eat, even if it's a brand name or a generic name, whatever it is that you are most apt to consume without really having to worry about it. Buy enough of that and you'll get by. There's really no point in spending any money on a brand that you've never tried, or buying food that you particularly don't eat or don't eat that often, because then you're less likely to use it, and you're going to get to a certain point where you regret having it when that time does come. Number 8, canned vegetables and canned fruits. Simple, plain, easy, old school. You get your beans, your peas, your beets, your carrots, your corn. You get your diced and sliced up fruits, pineapples, peaches, whatever it is. It's the easiest way to figure out how much you have and how long it's going to last you, when you can look at that can, open it up, pour it into a dish, into a bowl, eat it straight as it is, or warm it up, put it into a pot, whatever the case may be. Yes, cans, as far as transporting, if you're carrying, if you're walking, it's going to be heavy. That's why you need to think about alternate means of preparing certain foods, or having the packaging changed up to keep it fresh, keep it stable, but also make it lighter. But if it's just sitting on your shelf, keeping it in the can, easiest way to do. And again, the general rule of thumb for all food is keep it cool, keep it dark. That's the easiest thing to do. You don't want to have it sitting by a heat source like your oven or by a window area where it's getting the light from the sun in. You want to keep it in its container, in a box, in a bag, put it in a bucket or anything else. Put it in a room that doesn't get a dramatic temperature change but stays relatively cool, and you should be good to go for quite a long time. And with all canned goods, the key thing that you want to make sure is when you buy it that it's in good shape, but also maintain your eyes on it. You want to look for rust, depending upon if there's been any external moisture. You want to look for bulging on the top or the bottom or on the sides if it's been dented, things like that, because then there's a chance that the product inside could be compromised. And the last thing you want is to have it be your only food source, to only open it up to find out that it's been spoiled for the last 3 or 4 weeks and it's completely useless to you. Now, I mentioned canned fruits. I also want to mention dehydrated fruits. It's another thing. Raisins, prunes, dehydrated oranges, apples, whatever you can think of, they usually have some form of it. Now, the primary thing for that is it tends to be a little bit lighter because literally less water inside it, but it also makes it last longer by the simple fact is that moisture content has been removed. And also with dehydrated fruits, you kind of have a sort of quick go-to snack to kind of keep you occupied, because I myself am a muncher. When I'm in the middle of doing something or I'm waiting around, I tend to gravitate towards snacking on just about anything I can get my hands on. And to one extent, there's not a problem with having bags of Doritos and chips and things like that as a small on the side thing. You don't want to have a warehouse full of that stuff because that's not going to do you any good later on. But if you can keep something that's reasonably healthy on hand, then that makes it a little bit better. Now, before we get to the last one, number 10, I'm sure many of you have noticed I didn't mention salt, I didn't mention sugar, I didn't mention flour, for the primary reason that while yes, those are all consumable items, as far as off-the-shelf consumption, no one's really grabbing a bag of King Arthur flour and just digging their hand into it and munching along. Same thing with sugar and with salt. You can consume it right out of the container, but you're not going to be receiving any of the necessary balanced health benefits that it provides. Those are more key components to other things. You know, you use the flour, the sugar, the water, the salt, and you can bake all types of stuff. You have to add it into other things. You can add the flour into a broth to thicken it up a little bit, to make a gravy, to make it more of a stew, to give you a little bit more robustness in the food. You definitely can use sugar and use salt, and those are all shelf stable. If kept cool and dry specifically, keep those things dry, they will last for a very, very long time. So while it is something that as a new prepper you want to have in your stocks, in your stockpile, it's not the number one on my list or any other level for you must have a whole lot of that. Now, granted, if you're a person that bakes and you have that skill and you can make bread and everything else faster than most people can, you know, heat up a pizza roll, then, you know, good on you. You can stock up on all that extra stuff that you need. But if you're thinking about just building up a simple storage of food for 3 days, then you build out to 3 weeks and then out to 3 months, you don't need as much flour, sugar, and salt as you think you would, unless you are getting several components of recipes for meals that you are going to be making every single day, that you're going to be utilizing teaspoon and cup after cup after cup where you would warrant that. But that's, again, it's one of those things where there are a lot of things. This is not the exclusive list. This is not the only thing on there. There are a lot of different combinations that you can look at, and this is mostly focusing on what you can take off of a shelf and just basically immediately consume straight out of the container, or with a very minimum amount of effort. Heating up water for pasta for primarily the time period that it takes is less intensive. Ramen noodles, that's a pasta. And that doesn't take too long to heat up 2-3 cups of water, boil it, put the noodles inside, open the packet up or add your own seasoning, and you've got yourself a meal. Number 10 on the list, honey. Plain and simple honey, yes, a natural sweetener. It is an alternative to one extent to typical sugar. It does have a different consistency, different flavor, and there are some things when it comes to preparing it that you don't want to do when you're making something that may in fact negate the properties and the benefits that honey provides. Primarily, it has the internal gut health benefits for your body's immune system. It also acts as an antimicrobial or antibacterial component when you're doing minor first aid. Now, this is not something that if you've got a stab wound is going to heal the wound. You're still going to need some type of surgery for that, but this is primarily for topical levels of warding off infections, things on the surface, abrasions, cuts, you know, that rashy spot that you picked up when you were out scavenging for supplies, things like that. But for the most part, it's still a food source, and it is one of those things that it does provide a certain level of nutrients. Now, I had mentioned earlier about sugar, whether that's traditional refined sugar, raw sugar, stevia, whatever it is, you want to stay away from some of those other ones with the aspartame and things like that, because that's a very, very fast trip off of a very, very short runway before you run into problems if that's your primary source of nutrition that you're adding into your food substance. But that's a whole different topic altogether. But yeah, so honey, number 10 on the list. Now, again, for those of you that are new to prepping and you're trying to weed through all the information, you're never going to find the absolute perfect complete list of everything that you need to survive in an SHTF situation for X amount of time. But you will start to see certain levels of commonalities in my video, other videos that you may have watched, and other videos that you'll watch after, that you start to see that, oh, they highlight and stress this, and they talk about this, and they talk about that, and you start to whittle down what you can do, what you understand, and how you can sort of work things to your advantage and make it easier for you to take in the information. So if you would, like, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.